It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of February 12th, 1993. We got 6 movies to look at today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump on into it. I'm going to start off with one of my all-time favorite movies that it came out this weekend. It's a movie that I make a plea to watch every single year. It's the classic film Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. So, like I said, this is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it is for a number of reasons. For one thing, you've got a great premise to it. The way it's presented is incredibly well done. Credit the screenwriter Danny Rubin and Harold Ramis for the script they put together, combining just enough bits of comedy and drama throughout the film, not overusing them on either account, and it makes for a really enjoyable film. Another thing that makes the movie great is I love how they never give a real explanation on why Phil is going through this. Why is he reliving the same day over and over again? And usually that would be a point of criticism, but in a movie like this, you don't really need the explanation. It's kind of like what I said earlier about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. You don't really need to know how T'Challa died. I like that it makes you think about what could have happened. And in this case, I like the idea that they don't tell you exactly why Phil is going through this. In fact, if I read right, there was a part in the original script where they actually did talk about it, and it was like some kind of like so I'm trying to think of who it was. It was like a psychic who had something to do with it or something like that. It was like some kind of magic, but they never went through it. I can't exactly remember how it went, but I did remember reading that in the DVD brochure that they had for it when I got this for the first time on DVD a few years ago, many years ago, I should say. The cast overall here is great. I like Bill Murray in this. This is probably my favorite movie with him in this. But I mean, Bill Murray usually doesn't make really terrible movies. Even when he's in some really bad movies, he's usually putting his all into it. He usually will pick the right movie, and I won't even sugarcoat it. He's made some really bad movies. I mean, he's one of the reasons why I think the Garfield movies are somewhat enjoyable, because he can make comedy work even in movies that usually would be very, very bad. I mean, not to say that the Garfield movies are great, but he makes those movies somewhat enjoyable. You got Andy McDowell here. I think she's great in the movie. She comes off originally as the love interest, and I love how, as the movie progresses and you learn more about this character, you do feel the chemistry between her and Phil, and I think it works really well here. And Chris Elliott has some really good lines in here. Stephen Tobolowsky as Ned Ryerson is hilarious in here. He's just the perfect example of somebody that we all know, that annoying person that gets on our nerves, and when they're in their line of sight, you have no choice but to persevere. You just gotta try to get away from them as much as you can. If there's any real flaw to the movie, it's not even within the movie itself. It's the fact that this movie takes place in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, but this was not filmed in Punxsutawney. It was shot in Woodstock, Illinois. Even though there's a couple of aerial shots of Pittsburgh in the beginning of the film, you see Three River Stadium and where KDKA is, if you've been to downtown Pittsburgh before. But the only reason why they did it is because the real Gobbler's Knob is like 2 miles away from Punxsutawney, and it's like 80 miles away from downtown Pittsburgh. And I guess they did it because they did it in another town so they can get a bigger scope of the town itself. And it's more of a nitpick that it's not really filmed there, but considering that I've been down there before, because my cousins live around down there, I can kind of see why it's a very, very small town. And judging by this movie, they make this town look a lot bigger than the actual town is. And considering that, yeah, I live in the Western Pennsylvania area, I could tell that this was probably for the best that they did it in another town besides the actual Gobbler's Knob. But other than that, though, man, Groundhog Day is just a great movie all around. It's the best movie Bill Murray has ever done. He provides both his usual comedy antics and a little preview of the dramatic abilities he become known for stuff like Lost in Translation and Broken Flowers, St. Vincent, and it's just a movie that I watch every single year. I have to make it a plea to watch this movie every single Groundhog Day, just like I do with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles on Thanksgiving. I have to watch it. Then I have to watch stuff like A Christmas Story at Christmas, Christmas Vacation. Like, this is one of those movies that I have to watch every single year around Groundhog Day. It's just, life just doesn't feel right if I don't watch it at least once on Groundhog Day. And I mean, if you haven't seen it already, do yourself a favor, man, and just go out there and see it. You are missing out on one of the great, great movies ever made. I mean, this really is one of the greatest movies ever made. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Groundhog Day, it's a fantastic film. Need I say more about it? So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Marissa Tomei, Christian Slater, and Rosie Perez in Untamed Heart. By the way, I hope you have fun having Tom's Diner in your head for the next couple of weeks, because, yeah, Tom Diners is one of those sticky songs that just, whenever you hear it, it just gets stuck in your head for a while. You'll be doing your job, and all of a sudden you'll start going in your head going, do, 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 do. I mean, I like that the trailer actually puts it in there, just like, if you were tired of that song and all of a sudden you watch this trailer and it's just like it's back in your head again. But that's not really important to the story going on here. Untamed Heart, by the way, is the movie we're talking about, and it's a movie about it's basically a romantic drama where you have this young woman who's unlucky in love, played by Marissa Tomei, and this man who has a heart defect, played by Christian Slater. And usually these movies could be pretty corny. I know Dying Young was one of those movies that tried to do something similar to this, but it was just way too melodramatic, way too sappy on so many levels. But this movie, I think, actually does it the right way. I mean, this movie, I think, is a way better movie than that movie was. This is a really solid film. It's no classic by any means. It's not even that a great movie, but it is a fun, enjoyable romantic drama. I mean, you really do buy into the chemistry between Slater and Tomei. Plus, I mean, you got Rosie Perez. Usually, whenever she's in a movie, she's never given a really bad performance, and she's usually one of the best things about. She's usually very solid in a movie, and this is another really solid performance for her, and I really like her in this. And it's just a sweet movie. It's a sweet movie. Its heart is in the right place. The movie just really feels legitimate. It doesn't feel like it's forcing these emotions on you. They make you earn these emotional moments, and they are done very well. These are done very well. The casting overall is great. It's a movie that just feels like a nice little slice of entertainment. Like, it's a movie that doesn't really have to do too much to be groundbreaking. It just wants to give you something enjoyable, a nice little chick flick to see. This is the type of movie that you go to a movie theater on a weekend and take your girlfriend to see, and they would really enjoy it. I mean, it's a really wonderful film. Very underrated movie, in my opinion. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. You will not be disappointed by this. If you're looking for a good, solid romantic drama, Untamed Heart does the trick for you. So that's Untamed Heart. Now, with that said, on to the next movie, and that is Timothy Hutton and Laura Flynn Boyle in the thriller The Temp. So here's a movie that I think really didn't know what kind of a tone it wanted to have. First off, you have Tom Holland, who before this movie had done films like Child's Play and Fright Night, these horror movies that had a little bit of a comedic edge to it. This was sold as a straight up serious psychological thriller, but even then, it's a movie that doesn't feel like it was the studio couldn't agree on what kind of a tone it wanted. They had another ending that they wanted to do, but they said that it was too gruesome for test audiences, and they actually had to push the film back so they can actually shoot a new ending. And they really didn't know what kind of an ending they wanted to do. And it's just like, if you can't figure out what kind of an ending you want to do, and here's another thing you have to remember: they shot the new climax on January 18th, 1993. This movie came out on February 12th. They rushed this ending and got this film out there instead of taking their time with it. And you know that there's a huge problem when your climax is literally being shot a month before your movie is supposed to come out, and it definitely shows on screen here. This is a terrible movie, despite the great actors that it has. I mean, you got Faye Dunaway, Timothy Hutton, Laura Flynn Boyle, Dwight Schultz, Oliver Platt, Steven Weber, Maura Tierney, Lynn Shay. Just a really good cast overall. And for Laura Flynn Boyle, this could have been a really fun role for her. I mean, most people saw her a year prior in Wayne's World, and here she's playing the psychotic killer, psychotic killer, and it's just like, okay, maybe this could be fun for her, but even her performance in this movie just really feels like they really had no idea what kind of a tone they wanted to do with this. Did they want to do something that was actually legitimately good, or that they just want to make a stock movie. And because of studio interference, we got a generic stock psychological thriller with a twist that's not really all that good, and it just doesn't work. It's a movie that just really it's really lackluster on so many levels. I feel like there is a good concept here, but the movie overall is just a big mess, and I think even the people behind it even knew about it. In fact, Timothy Hutton said that this movie he suspected that the studio was influenced by the success of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle the year before and attempted to do something similar to that, but incorporated some more, but even throw in some more dark humor, which is why they got Holland, because, like I said, he did Child's Play and Fright Night, and those movies are horror movies, but they have comedic aspects to it. But those movies were done a whole lot better. This was not. This was a huge clusterfuck of a movie that just it's a mess on so many levels. It's a movie that you should avoid like the plague. I mean, it's not a very good movie, and even the people who made the film will tell you, yeah, it's not very good. So there you go. That's the temp. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Michelle Pfeiffer and Dennis Haysbert in Love Field. So Love Field is most notably known for a couple of things. This was actually made in 1990, but Orion Pictures was suffering financial losses and was about to file into bankruptcy, so they didn't even release the film until almost 2.5 years after the movie was filmed. And that's something I never really understood about Orion Pictures. Their studio kept us full because of the two Best Picture winners that they had in '90 with Dances with Wolves and then in '91 with Silence of the Lambs. And it's baffling how they went out of business so quickly. And it's kind of like what happened with New Line Cinema in the 2000s. I mean, they made the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That one of them won a Best Picture, but that studio completely shut down near the end of the decade for no real reason whatsoever. But that's another subject altogether. But in terms of this movie, it's directed by Jonathan Kaplan, who's done some movies that we talked about before: Immediate Family, Unlawful Entry. He also did Project X, The Accused, and this was one of those movies where it was pretty much an Oscar baitish type film. Michelle Pfeiffer herself got nominated for an Oscar for this, but the movie itself, I think it has some good ideas to it, but the execution just didn't work out so well. It's a movie that tries a little too hard. I think it's trying too hard to figure out what kind of a movie it wants to be. I don't know if it's trying to be something like on the same level as something like Driving Miss Daisy or what. I mean, it just didn't feel like a movie that was. They had a real good idea of what they wanted to do. They just said, get Michelle Pfeiffer, get Jonathan Kaplan, and we'll see if they can make something that'll get us some Academy Award nominations. Well, it did, but it didn't actually win anything. So I don't know. This movie, when I saw it a couple of years ago, I was just kind of like, this isn't bad or anything, because it's not a bad movie. It's just not executed very well. I don't think the script was in the right placement here. I mean, I'll give it to Michelle Pfeiffer and Dennis Haysbert. They're working off of each other really well, but it's a movie that also has kind of a tonal problem to it. They don't know if they want to be a serious drama or somewhat of a romantic comedy, but it can't really decide on which angle it wants to go with, and it just kind of falls apart pretty quickly. And it's just not very good. It's a movie that I think could have been a whole lot better, but what we got here just wasn't really all that enjoyable. So, yeah, that's Love Field. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Baz Luhrmann's Strictly Ballroom. This was the movie that introduced everybody to Baz Luhrmann. This was the movie that was the first part of his Red Curtain trilogy of theater motif-related films. The other two movies that would come after this would be William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and Moulin Rouge. Honestly, when it comes to Baz Luhrmann, there are movies that I like of his, but I don't like a lot of his movies. There's just something about most of his movies that are just kind of like, I don't know what he's trying to go for. Like, for example, we just had Elvis at the time that this came out. Elvis opened up this year. I saw it, and I was just kind of like, I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't think it was that great either. I think the movie could have been something really, really enjoyable. An Elvis Presley biopic could have been really interesting and fun, but just the way the film handles it, like some of their attempts at comedy and their attempts at trying to be is a crowd pleasing movie. That movie didn't really work out so well. And he's been known to have these type of movies, like Romeo and Juliet. I think is one of those examples. Um, Great Gatsby's one. Even though I really like Great Gatsby, I actually say that's probably one of my favorite films of his. Moulin Rouge, Australia. Um, this movie I think is his best, is one of his strongest films overall. Like I think in terms of story, in terms of good characters, in terms of good writing, good comedy, this is what I think of when I think of a really good, solid Baz Luhrmann film. It's a really solid film. The dancing overall is very well done. It's a wonderful film. It's a really great film. It's one of the strongest films. It's maybe the strongest film Luhrmann has done. Probably not my favorite one, but it's definitely the strongest film that overall he's made. And I think it's a really good film. If you haven't seen Strictly Ballroom, by all means check it out. You will not be disappointed by it. With that said, on to the last movie, and that is Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. So it's basically the New Zealand version of The Evil Dead, kind of. Sort of. I mean, you could definitely tell there's a lot of influence of Evil Dead here. And it's just a ton. It just looks like a ton of fun. This looks like a fun zombie comedy. It's as you can tell, I haven't seen it, but Peter Jackson, man, like his early works are they're very interesting movies. Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, and then this movie. And then after this, he became the Peter Jackson that we came to know. We kind of came to know with Heavenly Creatures. Kind of fell back here a little bit with The Frighteners, which we'll get to that one. It's a very mixed bag of a movie. And of course, the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hobbit movies, King Kong. He's one of the great directors, and this is one of those movies that's just a ton of fun. It looks like a ton of fun, I should say. And I'm kind of curious to actually check it out one day. Maybe not now since Halloween has passed, but maybe next Halloween I'll definitely check it out. It's a movie that I am very curious to see for myself, but yeah, it just looks pretty promising all around. Looks very silly, looks very over the top. It just looks like a ton of fun. It basically looks like a New Zealand version of The Evil Dead, and that's probably a good thing because I like the Evil Dead movies a lot. And this movie's a ton of fun. Looks like a ton of fun. I keep saying is like I've seen it. I haven't seen it yet. So, yeah. Dead Alive, or as it's called back in New Zealand, Brain Dead. So on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and next time we meet, speaking of the Evil Dead, one of the next movies we'll look at is Army of Darkness, which is widely debated as probably not the best in the Evil Dead series, but there's still a lot to really love about it. We'll delve into it on the next episode. We'll also look at Mac, Like Water for Chocolate, and The Judas Project. So 4 movies to look at next time around. We'll do that tomorrow. So with that said, thank you very much for watching. And as always, if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching. I will see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.